Anyway, do you want to introduce it?
No, not really. I'd much rather you introduced it.
Well, hello everybody from the right dishonourable crowd. It is the morning still when we're recording this, so my brain is still not working. Jimmy's here. Say hello, Jimmy.
Hello, Jimmy.
You're hilarious every single time you do that.
I think so.
So at the moment, the World Cup is happening in the wonderful South American country of Brazil, one of the BRIC nations, and
You might want to
basically all
explain what that means.
the BRIC nation. I think people who listen to us are very aware what the BRIC nations are.
All right.
I would hope so, because otherwise, just unsubscribe. Brazil, Russia, India, China.
And what about Brazil, Russia, India, and
They're the
China?
next superpowers.
They don't actually think that that's the case anymore, though.
No, but let's not go too far into tangents.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was just
Sorry.
meant to be descriptive for what Brazil is. So we're about a week and a bit in to the FIFA World Cup competition, and my two teams that I support are already out, Spain and England, so I am wallowing in self-pity at the moment. But there's also been a load of very interesting news stories regarding corruption in FIFA, despite the fact that we've been very aware of FIFA being a dodgy organisation for several years now, and many host nations have been very open about the fact that they have essentially bribed their way into hosting events, and basically the man who represents Qatar at FIFA, whose name is Mohammed bin Hammam.
That's very good. I'm
Thank you.
impressed.
Be fluent in Arabic in no time. Has been accused of very openly bribing FIFA officials so that Qatar was awarded the 2022 World Cup. Now, the thing about Qatar is something that I've talked about in a video before, is the fact that Qatar is the World Cup is a summer event, right?
Right. Yeah.
And Qatar is a desert nation, and Qatar during the summer regularly reaches about 50 degrees centigrade. Now, I would love to see there be a month-long football competition, which is of course very physically exerting, and not see a single person die.
Well,
So that
loads of the builders that have been working on the stadiums have already died. I think it's actually in triple figures already. 'Cause
yeah,
of
there's
heart
meant to be about
attacks.
200 people. And Qatar is just has a terrible record with human rights, and they have a lot of immigrants who go there, especially from India and Bangladesh, and they go there as construction workers, and then they get their passports taken away from them. They're not able to leave the country until their contracts are over. They're very often made to live in in terrible conditions in the middle of the desert.
But this is part of the strategy of awarding the World Cup and other sporting events to developing nations as opposed to richer ones, isn't it? That you
We kill people.
No, that it gives you a chance to shine a spotlight is the phrase that's used on.
Okay, so that's a lovely thing to say, but what if this spotlight means that lots of people end up dying? There was a guard. Obviously, the Guardian's going to be very sensationalist about this, but there was a prediction that around 2,000 people are going to end up dying before the 2022 World Cup actually comes around, and
I suppose
that's
I
all
suppose
very
it
well.
depends if you take a long-term view of things. That if you improve the country over time, because I mean the people who are living there currently are not necessarily enjoying very good conditions, regardless of whether or not there's a World Cup on.
But that hasn't been happening. There's been no call from sponsors or from FIFA for Qatar to make its practices with the construction industry better and have less people die. And it's only with these corruption allegations that there's actually been a backlash, and big sponsorship giants like Sony and Sony's the big one, Coca-Cola, Hyundai, Emirates, they have all. No, I think Sony the only one who's actually voiced anything?
I haven't heard anything from any of the sponsors, to be honest with you.
Sony, Adidas, and Visa have said that there needs to be an investigation into the way that Qatar has been awarded the World Cup. So people now are pretty sure that, well, to be honest, when a summer event got awarded to a desert nation that doesn't have any of the infrastructure to host a World Cup and no football culture, I think everybody was like, this smells dodgy. Although at the time I remember being like quite optimistic about the whole thing, and I was like, well, isn't it great that they're trying to take football to other parts of the world and trying to spread the message of football?
What is the message of football then?
Everybody playing things together. Um, are you a fan of the World Cup, Jimmy? Do you care?
I sort of don't care, but I still end up watching it. But I have that relationship with football anyway, just because of the country I live in.
Oh yeah, right.
But yeah,
I think it's very easy to avoid watching any football here. There are like other TV channels.
It's not though, because all my friends watch football and my brother watches football as well. It's not really that bad. I do kind of loosely enjoy it, but I'm not so interested I'd watch it by myself.
Oh, you see, I very much like I was sick when England lost to Uruguay. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be spoiling that for anybody. England have been kicked out at the group stages, by the way. I'm very annoyed and depressed about this. Hey ho, such is life. Rooney can't score. He can't perform under pressure. But I was sitting in my bed with like a stomach bug, watching the game and crying into my soup because I couldn't eat solids.
It's a very graphic description of what was
I
going
could have
on.
been more graphic, trust me.
Let's not go there.
But what do you think about the accusations of the Qatari World Cup bribery? And do you think that they might end up stripping Qatar of the World Cup, because that's never actually happened?
I have serious doubts that they're going to even have a serious investigation into the thing. I mean,
I believe they've already started it.
Have they already started?
Or there've at least been calls.
Okay,
to be fair,
there's
sponsors saying there should be calls is very different to there actually being one. So
yeah, I mean, I doubt they'll be stripped of it because FIFA does seem to be pretty endemically corrupt, and the way that Sepp Blatter and the African Confederation of Footballing Nations reacted to it, which was basically by calling the British press racists.
Did they really? Wow.
Well, Sepp Blatter.
Well, like I have heard stuff that's like, because England had a bid in for the 2018 World Cup, and we lost that to Russia. And to be fair, Russia getting anything at the moment, I also have to question that too. But no, nobody's brought up accusations about that, so we can't say anything.
Can you libel a country? Is that even possible?
I'm going to avoid libeling anything to do with Vladimir Putin. Because I have no doubts that he has the ability to, like, even a small fry like me, I think he would quite happily get me killed.
I think you've already libelled him, but then he doesn't enjoy much of a reputation
But
anyway.
I'm sure he enjoys, because whenever I do him whenever he comes up in a video, in a topic in my videos, I always put on my Vladimir Putin accent, and it's just racist, generic Russian, to be completely honest. But I'm sure he enjoys it, and that's why I haven't been assassinated yet.
I'm sure he does watch your videos very keenly.
Of course he does. All of the major world leaders do.
Indeed. Anyway, you were saying about FIFA calling the British press racist and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I have heard accusations from maybe less democratic nations that England was just very bitter about the fact that we didn't get it, and there was quite a funny quote from David Beckham, who was heading up the 2018 England World Cup bid, and he said, because he had already like confirmed votes and people had said that, oh yeah, we're definitely going to vote for England, that's fine, and we ended up getting like 2 votes, and he was like, I can deal with being lied to just to me, but they lied to the future king and to the Prime Minister. And it was just like, oh, sweetheart. Oh, like they care. They've got more issues about lying to you than they do to bloody David Cameron Condom Face.
Condom Face?
Don't you think he looks a bit like a blown up condom with a face drawn on it?
This is the Guardian gag, isn't it? I've never really understood that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I'd come up with that
Have
myself.
you? There is a sort of range of Steve Bell cartoons where he portrays David Cameron as having a condom face, and
Because he does have a condom face.
I'm not sure he
Or
does. And
or at the very least, a balloon with a face drawn on it. Like he's too bouncy and rubbery.
people like do talk about the amazing sort of skin quality he has for a man of his age. There've been
It's because he's never done a day's work outside in his life.
this is from a man who works predominantly in an air conditioned office.
That's irrelevant, and I have worked outside before. I used to pick
I've certainly
almonds.
been outside when I've been going to my office. So does that
Yeah,
count, right? Doesn't it?
that does count very much. Although he does cycle to work. Does he still cycle to work?
Isn't his office kind of in his house, more or less?
Yes, that's also. But
He
there
used to
be
cycle. He did used to cycle to Parliament. I remember seeing
But
videos.
you know what was hilarious? He had his shoes carried behind him in a car.
What?
So he used to cycle to Parliament from 10 Downing Street. He used to cycle there, promoting like the green agenda and all of that kind of stuff. But his shoes got transported in a car that followed him, and it was just like, David, just take the car, or like buy a load of hybrids, or like electric
or a
cars.
backpack maybe that can hold your
Or
shoes.
yeah, or a backpack. It was just like, oh, Mr. Cameron, you silly old oaf.
Anyway, I do think it's kind of fair that England was pretty upset about not getting any World Cup, but I don't really think that detracts from the high levels of corruption within
No.
FIFA generally.
I agree. Do you think that the calls from some of the sponsors are going to mean that there is some kind of like in-depth investigation? Because we know that this is almost definitely happened, because who in their right mind would award this kind of event to a country like Qatar?
Well, the Sunday Times, when they broke this story with all the leaked emails and stuff, pretty much devoted an entire paper to the corruptions, something like 16 pages or whatever.
Yeah.
So they must be pretty damn sure that it's true.
What did annoy me a little bit was the fact that they included stuff like they spent a certain amount of money on like entertaining FIFA members and all of that kind of stuff. Everybody does that. That happens in the Olympics. That definitely happened with like the England bid, the Australia bid, which was the favourite one to win the 2022 World Cup. Like, if you're a FIFA board member, then you get entertained fantastically well.
It's true of business in general, isn't it? If you're,
Yes.
it's true of diplomacy. It's true of public relations. Anything where you can butter someone up by giving them some free goodies, which is sort of bribery by other means. You'll probably do it, won't you?
Yeah, but it's just a bit heartbreaking because I still feel like there is, when you watch teams play and when you see, especially somewhere like Uruguay, they have a population of 3 million and they are one of the best teams out there right now. Mainly because of Luis Suarez, but we'll talk about that another time, I'm sure, because this is turning into a football podcast. But like most of the people who go to international football, who go on the international football stage, come from very humble beginnings, and it's about a love for the game. Everybody out there, they don't get paid very much extra. They're all millionaires already, and they're not playing for their country for the money, and so it's because it's a certain amount of
Prestige.
prestige and nationalism and sportsmanship. I think it is a very beautiful tournament, but it's just a shame that the Grim Reaper is the man presiding over it. The Grim Reaper.
Do you think the nationalism aspect of it is a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I was annoyed when I saw a couple of Scottish people in the crowd in the Uruguay
crowd.
Yeah, in the Uruguay England game, and there were people dressed up in like kilts and ginger hats, waving Scottish flags every time that Luis Suarez scored.
It's a long way to go just to demonstrate your dislike for England.
I'm assuming they were already there. I'm assuming. And then there was strange things as well when we played. No, when Costa Rica played their first game against Uruguay, I think there were people in the Costa Rica stands who were waving independence flags for Scotland, And it's like, but you're not even playing us yet. It's all a bit strange, but I think that this is the most positive form of nationalism. Like in the Olympics and in like sport in general, it is the most positive outlet for these kinds of emotions. Otherwise, you get like wars.
I mean, there have been calls for countries, because of the corruption stuff, for countries to pull out of FIFA. Do you find that a plausible scenario?
And by default pull out of the World Cup as well.
Well, that's one of the reasons I think no one has made any moves as of yet, because the World Cup is still ongoing. But say the World Cup finishes, and do you think any of the countries will pull up as a sort of mark of protest that this sort of thing has gone on?
You know what, I think that might happen, especially European nations that are miles up their own asses. I probably can't see that happening necessarily with South America, although maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. But if these investigations do go ahead and that it is proven that there have been very negative, like very blatant corruption charges, that these are true, I wouldn't put it past anybody, because to be honest, I think FIFA needs a rocket up its ass to reform.
It probably does, but I don't.
And the only way that that's going to happen is by big teams like Germany, England, France, Spain, Italy. It would depend on them taking a stand, I guess. And if anybody's going to take a stand, I would assume that it's the European nations.
Well, those are the only countries that really have, as you say, the power and the influence to make that sort of impact. But
yeah,
I mean, I personally don't find it very plausible that will happen either.
Why not?
Well,
because we're not performing very well in the World Cup anyway. It's not like we'll be missing out.
It's not like we're missing out on those trophies or anything.
Yeah.
No, but it just, well, firstly, I think if they form a new kind of footballing body, I don't really think it will be very much more improved than FIFA currently is, because I just don't see why it would be.
I don't think that they would necessarily be pulling out of FIFA in order to make a new one. I think that they'd be pulling out in protest and have a list of demands that FIFA reform in certain ways.
That was the suggestion from some, well, at least from some columnists who said that they wanted England to pull out of FIFA and then effectively start their own new FIFA.
I don't find that very plausible, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I do. It seems as though FIFA has just sort of absorbed the shock of, the Sunday Times coming out with this report, and then just sort of carried on pretty much without any real response to it or any even real contrition about the matter.
Well, it's FIFA. Like, they know that they can get away with anything. Did you hear about so in I saw this in a John Oliver piece that he did, and John Oliver is my new favourite satirist, by the way. I mean, he's absolutely fucking amazing.
I'm not actually familiar with him. Who does he write for?
No. He satires for HBO.
Okay. Yeah.
And he used to be on the Jon Stewart show, and now he has his own show. British guy, but he's now changed his nationality to American and does like weekly review shows.
Traitor. Disgusting.
Oh, but the stuff that he's coming out with is wonderful. And he did a piece about the corruption that is FIFA and the shitstorm that is FIFA, and they're in Brazil, and the fact that FIFA has a lot of power over host countries, and can basically do whatever the fuck it wants, so that these host countries can host these events. And Brazil,
I'm not sure they do have a lot of power. I think it's just that countries bend over backwards to kind of let them.
No, wait for this, Jimmy. So Brazil used to have a law, or still does have a law, where you're not allowed to sell alcohol in football grounds. And this was because there were a large number of deaths due to alcoholic violence, and it seems like quite a sensible thing. If you're a country that is having quite a lot of issues in football stands with drunken, disorderly behaviour, then, go on, ban the booze. And also it means that it creates more of a family atmosphere, and it's better for everybody all around.
Well, unless you want to drink, then it definitely is.
Unless you want to drink, but then you can wait for the hour and a half that the match takes and then go and get a drink afterwards, maybe?
But I want my drink now, Jazza. It's been a whole hour and I haven't been able to.
Don't be a pussy.
What do I do?
Don't be a pussy. The feminists are going to jump on me for that, calling you a pussy, aren't they? Oh well. But one of the major sponsors of the World Cup is the famous American beer Budweiser. And one of the conditions of getting the World Cup is that Budweiser be the only beer sold in stadiums, in affiliated stadiums, and the Brazilians had to pass a law that over their own law during the World Cup. So now beer is sold in World Cup stadiums in Brazil, despite the fact that before and after it, it's not, you can't buy beer, and it's only Budweiser, and it's because Budweiser is one of the platinum sponsors of FIFA.
That's pretty fucked up, but it is, again, it's an example of a country bending over to accommodate, the World Cup. If they didn't want the World Cup, they could have just said, no, we're not really willing to do that sort of thing.
No, but that's because they want to be able to. I don't think that you should compromise your own laws and your own beliefs, because basically FIFA are a load of bullies and they're a load of thugs.
Well, you say that they are bullies and they are thugs, but Brazil could have just said, look, we're not willing to do that for you, so if that's going to be a problem, then you can hold the tournament elsewhere. It's not as if they were, held at the end of the barrel of a gun to actually do that. No,
but the starting point is that they want to host this event because it is the amount of money that a country actually makes out of it is meant to be, it's in dispute and it's minimal. FIFA are the ones that make all of the money.
That it's
usually negative. Sometimes they break even. But it just disgusts me, and I feel like the only way of being able to do it is for maybe the 2018 World Cup to be boycotted by a few countries. But then what has boycotting these kinds of events ever done? Like, it happened in the Olympics during the 70s and 80s, and Cold War still happened.
Yeah, but I think you're probably overestimating the power of sport to stop international conflicts such as the Cold War. Yeah, I mean, I agree that I think the boycott will be pretty unlikely. So
no, I'm disagreeing. I think that it might happen.
Oh, you think it might happen?
Yeah, I think that if there is a proper a proper investigation, and the investigation shows that there has been gross misconduct on the part of FIFA, then
I don't think
it would not surprise me if the FA and the French Football Association and maybe a European alliance said, all right, we're going to boycott you for the next tournament.
I don't think they will. I think by the time the next tournament rolls round, enough time will have elapsed that FIFA can say plausibly, we've dealt with it, we've fired a few people that needed to be fired, we're a completely reformed organisation.
But the event's still going to be held in a country that is, first of all, less than ideal to be hosting an event of this kind, and where allegedly thousands of people are probably going to die just building the fucking stadiums. And then what are the stadiums going to be used for afterwards?
I believe they're being taken down afterwards, aren't they?
Yeah, it's absolutely insane that kind of policy towards human life is being backed by this disgusting organisation.
I would agree with you, but
listen to my strong words, Jimmy.
That maybe says more about.
Oh, and also, I wouldn't be able to go to Qatar anyway because I'd get arrested for being a gay man.
That's unfortunate. Were you planning on travelling to Qatar?
Well, it's a lot bloody closer than Brazil is.
Isn't that much closer?
I think it's significantly closer.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm looking at yeah.
And actually, there's the next two World Cups are just in abhorrent countries, and I am like I said, when they first got awarded, I was really quite optimistic about it. I was like, oh, we need to have more diversity. I think I made a video. We need to have more diversity in the countries that host World Cups in order to take the sport to different places. And now I think, Jazza, you bloody idiot, why were you so naive? These were clearly terrible ideas.
So you're saying we need less diversity now in who we pick to host?
No, but there need to be. I think we've had similar conversations about this, but I think that countries that get awarded these kinds of large international events need to be on a par with the kind of values of progressive countries. And that might sound like me being a progressive fascist, which is...
It does sound a bit like that, if we're being honest. If not a fascist, then certainly a bit of a bully.
But there's the... Yeah, well, maybe I should be FIFA then.
Jazza
But
for
it's
FIFA president.
it's the idea. There's a charter in the Olympic chart. There's a part in the Olympic charter where it's like nobody should be discriminated against in playing sport. And then to give the Winter Olympics to Russia, where there were strong anti-gay laws, and to Qatar, where there is essentially slave labour, and this is meant to be like a celebration of sport and a celebration of like a sport that anybody can do. One of the wonderful things about soccer is the fact that you can play it from whatever background you're from. All you need is a couple of t-shirts for a goal and a football, and that's it. You don't need all of the equipment and all of the bullshit that comes with a lot of other mainstream sports. Soccer is truly democratic in that everybody can play it. And even if you don't have a football, you can tie up a few plastic bags with string and then play it in like the yard. People from the favelas and people from private schools play it. And to give it to a place like Qatar, where human rights and slavery, like the closest thing that we have to slavery, still exist, is just appalling.
Well, I suppose you're left with a kind of dilemma then.
I'm just going to get off my high horse now and...
Well, I'd be interested to see what your response to this is, and I think it's probably quite a good way to wrap up things. Do we think that sporting events are a good way of putting pressure on countries that have laws that we don't like, such as the Russian anti-gay laws or the Qatari, well, also the Qatari anti-gay laws and just the general work rights situation as well?
If you had asked me after the Beijing Olympics, then I would have probably said yes, because there were a lot of positive things that came out of the Beijing Olympics. There is a slightly more liberal press. There was a lot more debate about people who were being evicted from their houses because of renovations that were happening because of the Olympics. Beijing was a very good example of the positives that can happen when media shines a light on these kinds of events. Then after Russia, where essentially there was just a massive shrug by Vladimir Putin, and there was a huge uproar in the Western liberal media about gay rights and all of that kind of stuff, and now it's kind of just been forgotten. That has kind of put a downer on my opinions of how positive these kinds of events and this kind of media scrutiny.
So is it still worth doing then, or is it something
do.
that we should just only start awarding sporting events to countries?
Well, let's not pretend these countries aren't awarded these events because FIFA or the IOC are thinking, this will be a really good chance for us to shine a light on the corruption in this country. Let's give them the Olympics. Like, that is not what is going through their heads. And
you think it's purely a money thing then, a profit thing?
Of course it fucking is. Of course it is.
Well, maybe we should stop taking international sporting so seriously then, if that's basically what drives it.
Have you seen any of the like on the road reporters who are in Brazil? Like, sport and specifically football in an awful lot of the world is the shining light that really distracts people from the fact that they live in quite a lot of poverty. Like in South America and Latin America, football is often described as a religion. And I think that we're quite jaded about it in the developed world because, it's just sport, you know? And often it can be tied to hooliganism and negative stuff like that. But for a lot of people, sport and following sport and taking part in it is one of the only releases that you get from being somebody who lives in poverty and lives in like severe conditions in their lives. And so I think that sport should be taken seriously, and I think sport can do fantastic and wonderful things. I'm a great believer in that. But we just need to. I was going to say we need to assassinate all of FIFA, but that's probably going to get me killed.
So first we've libelled them pretty seriously, and then, well, not really libelled, but
no, all of what I've said is true.
It's all true.
From
So
when
it's,
I said
so
that
it's
I
not
wanted...
libel, and now we've got a little bit further and called for them to be executed, which might be that's a bit far.
I would like
think.
to officially retract that statement. But
that
no,
statement
we
was
just
intended for comedic purposes only.
and obviously it was really hilarious, and everybody's sides are splitting right now. Yeah, FIFA is the problem, and I think that perhaps there is a chance for the next couple of World Cups for there to be a change in the way that FIFA is governed. If certain nations take a stand. Imagine if Brazil took a stand, and imagine if Brazil like boycotted the World Cups after it perhaps like won the 2014 one. Like that would
Both
really
of those
send a
things
message,
seem
and
pretty
then
unlikely.
FIFA would have to like take some kind of action.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it will happen.
We used to drink bottle gins and know what how to sing. Eat the trees and on such bar. We used to dance, so take a chance. I lost my mind to young romance. Yeah, I don't mind, I got it back. Half the time I'm waiting for a second chance. Half the time I'm glad I feel alright.
Well, something we can do is we can say a nursery rhyme together. It's something that I've used before. Do you want to do that?
In what context have you used
So
this
I
before?
start saying, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by his..." That's probably the
better one to sing.
yeah. But then you join in, and you're saying it at the same time as me, and so then you line them up.
All right, go on then.
Okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch
A
a tiger by his toe.
Oh god,
And-
it's not even in line. I don't know the rhyme that well, to be honest.
Okay, what one do you know?
I'm not really good
If you
on
want to
that.
be my lover, you better get with my friends. Make it last forever. Friendship never ends. If you want to be my lover, you have got to give... Come on, you must know the Spice Girls.
Not so well that I actually know the lyrics. I've got to
Ah. Well, what lyrics do you know then?
admit. How familiar are you with the works of Bob Dylan?